Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Wanted to review the joint practices from the last couple days between the New York Giants and the New York Jets, and here to help me do that is Big Blue Views superstar Nick Falato with who seems to have a big fan these days in Giants legend Carl Banks. So and Nick was at practice the last couple days with me. So Nick and I will tell you what we saw. Nick, thanks for hopping on.
Absolutely, Ed. It was a pleasure to be in your acquaintance. Ed is a very fun guy to be around. Let's just say that. And we killed it. I feel like with our coverage of the Giants practice, watching the defenses on both sides of the New York both New York defenses freaking dominate. Really.
Yeah, I don't know about the fun part, Nick, unless you're talking about the fun of watching Patty Traina and I pick on each other all the time.
Yes, you guys always pick on each other. It's very entertaining for me.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So, but anyway, let's talk Giants. Let's talk joint practices. And just from your perspective, what we did in the 2 days was, you watched offense one day and defense the next day. We split, we each split offense and defense the 2 days. So just from the 2 days that you saw, what is your general feeling at this point about the Giants, about where they are as we get really, really close to 53-man roster cuts?
So firstly, I want to say with the offense, that's who I watched in the first practice. The Giants did not have Andrew Thomas. They didn't have Jermaine Illuminor in the second practice because of the birth of his child. Congratulations to Jermaine. They didn't have Malik Neighbors. Darius Slayton wasn't really playing. So they were, I would say, severely shorthanded on the offensive side of the football. And it showed, specifically on that first practice where the Jets defense was getting pressure on Russell Wilson. The Giants really couldn't complete any passes down the football field. And there were a couple nice runs by Devin Singletary, a couple nice off-tackle runs, and a backside pursuit. Exploitation by the Giants, really by Devin Singletary, just seeing the flow of the defense and then making them pay with a cutback. But other than that, there weren't many great first-team plays in that first practice in Florham Park, New Jersey. Second team, a little bit of a different story. I felt like Jackson Dart with the one corner route that went for like 35 yards to Theo Johnson. That was an exceptional read and an exceptional play by the Giants offense. And there were a couple other plays that Dart missed from an accuracy perspective. But overall, my assessment of Jackson Dart is that he's fine and he's developing, and he's, maybe you could say, ahead of schedule, depending on how far along you think he's coming. Now, I wanted to get your perspective on this before we get into the defense. With Dart, it does seem like he's making checks at the line of scrimmage, checking protections, adjusting. I don't know if it's audibling, but maybe possibly even audibling like we saw him do in that first preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. But he seems comfortable. That's my primary takeaway, and that's what I want to see from a rookie quarterback coming from Lane Kiffin's system, is some sort of comfortability that maybe you can project and prognosticate further and say, if he continues to be comfortable and continues to learn this offense and develop a rapport with these receivers who aren't even starting, he's running with like Montrell Washington and little Jordan Humphrey, then maybe you can say, hey, maybe he will be ready at some point this season, depending on how the Giants season goes. So I wanted to ask you, Ed, what was your overall assessment on that second practice of Jackson Dart? Because for me, man, like I was mildly impressed with what I saw.
The funny thing is, I think with Jackson Dart, what I have said from the very beginning, going all the way back to OTAs in the spring, is he has shown nothing. He has done nothing that would tell you that any of this is too big for him.
Yeah.
That he's overwhelmed by it, that the New York, New Jersey market, is overwhelming for him, is too much for him to handle, that he won't be comfortable in the NFL. And I thought the joint practices that, I saw the offense on Wednesday specifically, and I didn't think it was an exceptional day for Dart, but again, he looked like he belonged. He didn't look overwhelmed. He looked comfortable. He made a couple of nice throws. And you go back to the Buffalo game, the touchdown pass to little Jordan Humphrey looks like, I don't know if it's an outright audible, but we've seen the clips enough to know that it was a route adjustment that Dart made, with little Jordan Humphrey at the line of scrimmage. So for me, and I've had a chance to talk to him a couple times, he looks like he belongs, and you can tell that he feels like he belongs. He has confidence in his ability, and I've seen nothing from Jackson Dart to this point that would be a red flag or an alarm bell or a, oh my God, this isn't going to work out in some fashion or another. It's been funny over the years. You watch these rookies, and there are a couple of guys over the years, and I'll just give you 3 names over the years of guys that the Giants drafted in the first round, and you quickly, as you started to deal with these guys, the alarm bells started to go off. Kadarius Toney was the first one.
That was easy.
I mean, that was easy. I mean, when you can't show up to your first NFL practice with shoes that fit, that's an issue. David Wilson, was another one.
Okay.
I watched David Wilson during his first or second practice of rookie mini camp. Mind you, he was playing for Tom Coughlin and Kevin Gilbride at the time. And I watched him catch a pass over the middle, run down the field, throw the ball down, throw himself on the ground, and start to do the worm in front of Tom Coughlin. Okay. And I was like, this is not good. Okay. This is not good.
Tom didn't like it?
I don't think Tom liked it very much, but Eric Flowers was the other one, because Eric Flowers, just whatever he was as a player, he never looked comfortable in the New York environment. He didn't like to deal with the media. He never seemed to mesh with his teammates, never seemed to really make friends in the locker room. And that you could see from the very beginning that personality wise, that fit wise, Flowers was going to have a hard time. With Jackson Dart, there's none of that. There's
about
no go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, and this kind of deviates from the point, but what about Eli Apple when it came to that?
I hadn't even thought about Eli Apple. And for me, the maturity was an issue from the very beginning. Eli Apple didn't start as badly as it ended, with Eli Apple. But I think it raises an alarm bell when on the first day of practice, your mother drives you to the facility as an NFL player. Okay. It's just a little bit goofy. You know what I mean? It's a little bit, that doesn't happen. Mommy doesn't drop you off at the facility when you're an NFL player.
Yeah.
And that was a little, so that was a little bit, that was a little bit different, but Eli Apple's probably another one who you had a feeling right from the beginning, and you don't get that with Jackson Dart, with Abdul Carter. You don't get that with any of the rookies in this class. I keep hearing, Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander. You hear about maturity with these guys all the time. Oh, there go my dogs, which means my wife must be home. I don't get that reaction.
No,
man. They paddle up to the door when I come home, and they look and they see that it's me and not my wife, and they just go back to their little beds and go back to sleep.
I feel bad for you, Ed. My 80-pound bulldog runs up and sprints into my knees. He's trying to tear my ACL, so I can't go to joint practice anymore.
No, man, I'm second class around here. It's just what it is. I accepted that a long time ago. So, but anyway, yeah, in terms of Dart, in terms of the rookie class, I don't see any of that where it's like, this is going to be an issue just because the personality, doesn't fit, in the NFL.
Yeah. No, that's I get that same exact vibe. I don't have the breadth of experience that you do on the beat and being around the players, but just watching him comport himself and handle himself, he seems very comfortable. And that's the word I would use at this point. And that's not just when he's around his teammates. That's not just when he's at the podium. That's with every single thing I've seen from Jackson Dart. Comfortable would be the word that I would use to describe the way he just acts in front of everybody and in front of the media and the fans and everything.
Absolutely. I've had a couple of players say, he's got a lot of confidence for a kid who hasn't done anything yet, and he's got a lot of swag. And I think Dexter Lawrence was the one who was a little bit taken back by it, just because it's like it's a lot for a young guy. It's a lot for a quarterback, just coming into the league, but it will serve him well. I did want to say, in terms of the offense, I know you and I talked about what you had seen on the first day. On the second day, the Giants, again, without Malik Neighbors, with Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton both on the field, but neither of them had a pass thrown in their direction in any of the 11-on-11 work that was done against the Jets defense. So it was all Bo Collins, Dalen Cambray, Gunnar Olszewski, little Jordan Humphrey. It was all of those guys at wide receiver, Montrell Washington. They did make a concerted effort to throw the football down the field. They did make a couple of plays. They missed more shots down the field than they hit, but there was a concerted effort to throw the ball down the field on the second day. There was also a concerted effort to run the football and be a little bit more physical maybe than they had been on the first day. That didn't always work out very well. They only had a couple of really good running plays, but it did work out in the sense that I do think a lot of the Giants felt good about the little skirmish that they had on offense, because it was Giants players jumping to the defense of other Giants players. When Tyrone Tracy took a hit that the offensive line felt was a little over the top, it was veteran offensive linemen like John Runyon, like Greg Van Roten, who jumped in and took exception to it.
Yeah, you absolutely love to see it. I also saw rookie Marcus Bowe getting mixed up in a little skirmish out there. And he's another one that I would use the word comfortable to describe, because afterwards you and I got a chance to speak with him a little bit, and he was just sitting down and he was just very relaxed, and he was just answering your guys' questions very with ease, really. So Marcus Bowe would be another player. And then you see how he got into that scrum and the video circulating around Twitter, and that also gets you excited. But what gets you more excited about Bowe is the fact that he's playing on the left side and the right side at tackle, and he's holding his own well in training camp against players he's never seen before, who are NFL guys with years under their belt.
Absolutely. It's funny because when I talked to him the other day, and a couple of other reporters were there, and you were there, and you're absolutely right. He's very comfortable. He's very matter of fact. He's even keeled. He feels like he belongs, and nothing fazed him. He just very, matter of factly answered our questions. And all the scouting reports were, oh, he's an athlete. He's nimble. He's a basketball player. He's this, he's that, but he's only 300 pounds and he's not that physical. Yeah, I would beg to differ about his physicality when you watch him. But, the other thing that the scouting report said is, well, he can play all the positions, but he's probably going to have to move to guard. Well, I asked him the other day, I said, I asked him about all those scouting reports. And I said, in your heart, I said, do you feel like you are an NFL tackle? And he just looked at me and he said, yeah. And then he hesitated for a second and he looked at me and it's like he burned a hole through my head because he said, what do you think?
Ooh, I
What do
like
you
that.
think?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
he said, what do you think? And I was like, I'm not here to answer questions.
Yes. Yes. No, that's not my job. My job is to
Not
write.
my job is not to answer questions, but I'm also not going to give you an answer at this point that you don't want to hear.
No. He seems, and I unfortunately missed that part of the interaction. I was over listening to Abdul Carter talk, and yeah, man. I've been impressed with the Giants rookie class, and this is the second year in a
Absolutely.
row that I've said that. Now you don't want to put the cart before the horse. They have a lot to prove, all that, and so does last year's class. But last year's class really impressed. This year's class, early takeaways, leaving a mark. Leaving a mark.
Absolutely. I certainly think so. And, unfortunately with the rookie class right now, we haven't seen much this summer of Cam Scatabo. Don't know, when he's going to be back, but the little bit that we have seen, he's also a good player. Hopefully he will get healthy enough to be an impact player quickly because he does have, especially in the passing game, he has a skill set that the Giants can benefit from.
Absolutely. I'm devastated really that he's not out there. And re-aggravation of an injury, they got to take it slow at this point. Hopefully he could be available by week 1, but that remains to be seen.
The big concern, I think the big red flag on offense right now is the 2 injured stars. And that's, Andrew Thomas and Malik Neighbors. Brian Daboll extremely tight-lipped about injuries, and it drives me crazy. It drives the media crazy. It drives fans crazy. But the reality of it is an NFL coach is never going to give you more information than he has to give you or that he wants to give you. If he wants to send a message to a certain player or to a certain or to his team in general, he's never going to give you more than he wants to give you. And at this time of year, they're not required to give us anything about injuries. He doesn't have to tell us there's anybody injured if he doesn't want to, because they're not required to until they have to file an injury report before week 1. But with Andrew Thomas, it's concerning to me at this point that he's not off the physically unable to perform list yet after his Lisfranc surgery. And we don't know for sure if Malik Neighbors is missing time again because of his toe. But if it is the toe again that's causing him to miss practice time, that's a concern because he sat out all spring to try to manage that issue. So it's a concern if that's again, causing him to miss time.
Yeah, concern is to put it mildly as well, Ed. I think there are I don't have delusions of grandeur about the New York Giants in 2025, but I think they could be a much more respectable and competitive team than we've seen basically since 2022 and prior to that, and a different type of team than the Giants were in 2022. But there are 3 players that I feel like are almost indispensable, and 2 of them are not practicing right now, Malik Neighbors and Andrew Thomas. I don't like the Giants. The whole operation could fall apart if any of those 3 players get injured for an extended period of time. And that's Malik Neighbors, Andrew Thomas, and I would argue Dexter Lawrence because of the dearth of depth behind Dexter Lawrence. So I'm right there with you, man. Like I hope we receive information on that. I hope it's not that much to worry about. I'm sure Brian Daboll hopes the same. But at this point, right now, here on August 14th, Malik Neighbors and Andrew Thomas can't go by week 1. That's I think hit the alert button early on in the season type of situation.
Absolutely. You and I talked about this, I think, while we were at one of the practices. And I think where the Giants are heading is to becoming a team. You talk about an identity, you talk about what kind of team, they're going to be, where they rely on their defense. And we'll talk about the defense in general here in a minute, but where the defense is going to be the best part of this football team. And I think their identity is going to be a really good defensive football team that relies on their defense to keep scores down, to make plays that put them in good positions to score points, and an offense that is not going to dominate anybody. But if they're an offense that puts up 20 to 22 points, that's a whole lot better than the 15 or 16 that they averaged the last couple of years. They just need to be an offense that hits the big play once in a while, that can really flip the field or change the scoreboard, and be opportunistic when the defense, sets them up in a good place to score, by taking advantage of that. And I think that's the way that they're going to have to play.
That's the formula that teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers have used recently. It's a formula that's not all that flashy and not all that exciting, but it's one that gets teams deep into the playoffs sometimes, depending on how dominant the defense is. And I think the offense, if everybody is healthy and Andrew Thomas and Malik Neighbors are back, you're right, 22 points a game. Like they could hover around there, and they could have some boom games depending on the matchups and the defense and how the defense forces turnovers and all of that. So I'm hoping they can achieve that, and I'm hoping that that's achievable, even if Malik Neighbors and Andrew Thomas miss sometime. But that I'm a little tentative to actually believe, because the catalyst of the offense is Malik Neighbors, and Andrew Thomas is going to be so important to the protection. And I don't know, like James Hudson I don't think James Hudson is a bad football player, but he's definitely he would be the weakest offensive lineman, I think, on the Giants. And that includes John Michael Schmitz, who I also have some gripes with when it comes to his play. So yeah, I don't necessarily want to see him out there. I don't know if Marcus Bowe would be ready to start early on in the season, but he's somebody to monitor for that conversation as the season progresses, especially if Andrew Thomas cannot go and James Hudson is struggling.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. It's just so interesting with Marcus Bowe because he played the right side, exclusively in college, and he's been playing more and more on the left as training camp, as the preseason has gone along, and it'll be interesting to monitor if they have to replace Andrew Thomas. Won't be fun by any stretch of the imagination, but I think what they need, what they would want on that side at that left tackle spot is just somebody who can function over there. And they didn't really have that a year ago until they put Jermaine Illuminor over there.
No, they did not. And Jermaine Illuminor, I mean, he's another one who's important for this offensive line. And right tackle, that wasn't even the original plan, right? Like the Giants' original plan when they brought in Jermaine Illuminor got blown up, and now they're making it work. And then you have the whole Evan Neal situation. How is he going to work out at right guard? You said yesterday in practice against the Jets, Evan Neal, he did not practice in the first Jets-Giants practice. He looked, you would say, adequate to above average, maybe?
Yeah, he looked really good in the one-on-ones. Okay, it's much harder to judge. In the 11-on-11s, when you're on the sideline, it's a lot harder to really focus on an individual offensive lineman. In the one-on-ones, what I saw from Evan Neal was the big question with Evan Neal was always his footwork, his lateral mobility. Okay, and I think that ability to be quick enough to adjust and run a guy around the pocket from right tackle, or to adjust to the inside move, at right tackle. But at guard, just watching the one-on-one, pass protection stuff, when he gets in that, I guess what you would call phone booth, a phone booth where a guy's not running him around the edge per se, when he plants his feet into the ground, he wins every rep. If he plants his feet in the ground and gets the opportunity to just set himself, then he wins every rep. It's going to be the experience of picking up the stunts and knowing what his assignments are as a guard, that we'll see what happens with Neal. my fingers are crossed actually that he wins that job, because I think that would be the best case scenario for the Giants, is that he wins that job and does well there.
Yeah, and then GVR would be a high-end swing interior offensive lineman who could play center if something were to happen to John Michael Schmitz, or if John Michael Schmitz's play continues to be lackluster and a little mediocre.
Absolutely. Nick, let's talk about defense. And I said a couple minutes ago that I think the identity of this team is going to be built around the defense. And we didn't see anything against the Jets that really would argue against that, because I watched the defense the first day, you watched the defense the second day, and I think it was crystal clear that the Giants defense, especially the front seven, won both days.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was so much of number 0, number 5, number 97 when he was out there, number 51 just in the backfield from a variety of different angles. The Shane Bowen was dialing up not like heavy blitzes, but simulated pressures, and then 5-man blitzes. And again, a simulated pressure is when 4 rushers rush the quarterback, but 1 is a non-traditional rusher. So if it's a 4-down lineman, like Kayvon will drop off into coverage, and then Micah McFadden or Javon Holland will come on the blitz on the simulated pressure. And the Giants were just harassing the Jets. And the Jets don't have a bad offensive line either. Now, Justin Fields is not the most decisive quarterback, but he's mobile and he can navigate the pocket relatively well. And a lot of the times I was just watching 7 run around back there and just be like, okay, Micah McFadden just slapped him on the ass. All right, Brian Burns just slapped him on the hip on this play. I think the Giants had like 4 or 5 sacks just in first team yesterday. And a lot of it was Burns had a phenomenal practice yesterday, and Abdul Carter did as well. So it's very exciting. It coincides well with what a lot of Giant fans have been excited about since the Giants went out and added Abdul Carter via the draft. And I think this pass rush, man, if the rest of the team can pick up their end of the couch even slightly, I think this could be the best pass rush in the National Football League. And I do not think that's being hyperbolic.
I don't either, because you just look at the 3 edge rushers, and when you look at it, you know, Brian Burns is a really good player and a really good leader on that football team, and I'll talk more about him in a minute. Kayvon Thibodeau is not chopped liver, all right? Kayvon Thibodeau has never been what you would really ideally hope for out of the number 5 overall pick. But that doesn't mean Kayvon Thibodeau is not a really good football player. Kayvon Thibodeau is incredibly physical. He really does a nice job against the run. He really does a nice job on his side, just being physical and setting a tone. And he may not be a natural, speed rush guy off the edge, but he's a good pass rusher. Not a great one. He's a good one. And he's almost an afterthought when you think about those 3. So, and the other thing I just wanted to say about Brian Burns is I loved hearing him talk the other day about wanting to take his game to a level where it's never been. And I asked Brian Daboll about that on Thursday morning when we had a chance to talk to him via Zoom. And he said, that's an important thing for not only Abdul Carter to hear. He said that is an important thing for the entire roster to hear. And, he said to me, I show clips of Brian Burns to the entire team almost every day, just because of the way he practices, because that's how we want to practice. And that's how you lead a football team, is just by not by opening your mouth, but by doing it, and by demanding, by your own effort, demanding that everybody else does it as well.
By being a positive influence, right? Like, everyone's looking at Burns, the veteran who got paid all this money, and they're saying, like, this guy's sprinting through the whistle. This guy is doing everything. He's played injured all throughout played injured all throughout last season. In a lost season, he could have easily been like, you know what? Nah, I got this. I'm going to say he didn't do that. That is setting the example for others to emulate. Brian Burns embodies that. Dexter Lawrence, I know he was injured last year, but he also embodies that. Like, that's setting the tone for what the coaching staff wants, and that's living it. As you said, it's not just word of mouth, flying out BS, right? It's living it and then showing it. And he has done that since he's arrived here and got paid. So, I mean, I was a massive supporter of that trade because I've been a massive Brian Burns fan dating back to his freshman year at Florida State. But the leadership is something that I couldn't really quantify at that time. And he's exceeded all those expectations since he's arrived.
Absolutely. Nick, let's talk a little bit about the back end of the Giants defense. And there are still concerns at cornerback opposite Paulson Adebo. I think we saw on Wednesday, we saw Adebo do something that he hasn't generally done in his career, which is actually travel with a wide receiver. I think he spent 98% of his career snaps have come at left corner. So it's not something he's traditionally done. And maybe that indicates some concern on the Giants' part about their cornerback 2 situation. But here's the thing that I think about when I think about this Giants defense. You think about the Parcells era Giants defenses, and you think about the Coughlin era Super Bowl winning Giants defenses. Both of those defenses were built around front 7, and you can say really that both of those defenses had questions at the back end. But in general, you would say that the front 7, basically covered for a lot of that. And this defense sort of feels like, I'm not saying it's a Super Bowl winning defense, but it feels like that sort of traditional Giants defense that's built around dominant guys up front.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's reminiscent of that 2007 team just from archetype standpoint, right? I think Javon Holland and Tyler Nubin could be a dynamic safety pairing. Hopefully everything's all right with Nubin. He left yesterday's practice, but I think that can be dynamic. I'm worried about the corners. Like, I like Paulson Adebo. Is he a shutdown number 1? No. But if anything happens to him, who are we talking about? Cordell Flott and Deontay Banks? Neither of those guys have, I believe, proven anything to at least let you be like, yeah, that's a good cornerback too. It's one of those things that's like, he's a cornerback too, but we have to kind of monitor this and wait and see. I feel a little queasy about it. And now you're talking about Paulson Adebo goes down. Both those guys are starting. And then who's the depth behind them? Nick Jones and TJ Moore. So I think that's a massive liability on the Giants' defensive part, man. And I think it could plague the Giants if the pass rush doesn't get home, or if the Giants, if they struggle to stop the run, not giving them a lot of pass rushing situations, and then making the game script more neutral for the offense. So the offense can then, really just pick apart and then make the defensive line question if it's going to be a run or a pass. So they're not pinning their ears back and they're going, and that could slow the pass rush down. And that's what a lot of offensive coordinators are going to do. I don't have enough confidence in that secondary, specifically the cornerback position, to hold up. Like yesterday, Drew Phillips only practiced a little bit. Same with Cordell Flott. Deontay Banks wasn't there. So the names that were running with first teams like Nick Jones and TJ Moore and D Williams and these players. And I don't know if the roster is going to look like that after the 53-man roster is solidified and the Giants pluck the players all from around the league with their number 3 priority waiver spot. I don't know if the Giants will look to upgrade the cornerback position specifically, but looking at it on paper, it gives me a little bit of an uneasy feeling.
Let's finish up by just talking a little bit about that run defense. A lot of people are questioning the run defense because it hasn't been good the last couple of years, and I get that. And I've had people say, well, they didn't do enough on the defensive line, and I'm not sure I agree with that. You added Darius Alexander. I don't know how much earlier you could have picked a true interior defensive lineman in this particular draft. They added, a couple of, now they're not all pro guys, but, Roy Robertson Harris has had a good career. Jeremy Ledbetter's had a good career. Not a fantastic player, but a veteran guy who belongs in the league, adds a lot more depth than they've had last year. They added Carter, who's not a pure run defender, but just his presence and his speed and his athleticism should help the run defense. Chauncey Golston is a good player who should help the run defense. I look at it and I say, there's no real reason based on talent why they shouldn't be a much better run defense. And, yeah, it would be nice if there was another all pro defensive tackle next to Dexter Lawrence, but we don't live in a world where you get everything that you want. And I thought the day that I watched the defense play, I thought the run defense was very, very solid. So I'm curious what you thought, the day that you watched the defense as well.
I agree. I think the run defense was fine yesterday. Now, 2 zone read runs went for big gains by Justin Fields. I'm not too worried about that. The Giants can't hit the quarterback. So, I'm not worried about the zone read runs as long as the Giants can hold that down once the season runs around. They didn't really game plan necessarily for the Jets throughout like this, like it would be for a regular season game. So that's not something I'm overly worried about. Braylon Allen had a weak side run that went for like a 35-yard touchdown. That was rough. But other than that, there was like 6 or 7 other runs by the Jets offense against the first team. And the defense was just, they were structured. They were gap sound. They executed their gap integrity. They moved well as a unit. They did not have any like massive cutback lanes. No one was over pursuing. So I came away, and the linebackers were fitting well. The safeties were filling well. So I came away pleased with what the run defense overall, how they looked, even though they had a couple plays where they broke it off for a long gain. I'll say this though. I am worried a little bit about the run defense too, because I think if the Giants shut down the run, that's when the pass rushers can really shine. But if the Giants are giving up, 4, 5, 6 yards on the ground, and it's like 3rd and 2 situations instead of 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6, then that's going to hinder the upside of the overall Giants in general, let alone just their pass rush. But stopping the run, look, you take 97 off the field. I don't know if there's 2 defensive linemen I trust to not get pushed around. Right? I don't know if that's the case. And Nacho, the Giants could move on from Nacho, eat very little dead cap. I think it's a little bit over 1 million, and then save about 3.2 or 3.4 on the cap. But I don't know if they're in a position to do that because there's not proven depth from a run defense standpoint behind Dexter Lawrence. Because Roy Robertson Harris, look, I think he can be an asset, relatively speaking, as a pass rusher, as we saw against the Bills. But I don't know if he could just sit there and eat duo blocks and hold up double teams to allow Micah McFadden and Bobby Okereke to do his thing. I don't know if I trust that. I don't trust that with Jeremiah Ledbetter. Right now, I don't trust that with Darius Alexander. So I think Nacho's presence might be retained because the Giants do not have any proven talent behind Dexter Lawrence just when it comes to fitting the run. Because even though he's not excellent at that, he's adequate. I would say above adequate. I think he's, solid at that. So, So that's not a position you really want to be in, especially in a defense that's even or minus in the box so frequently because Shane Bowen likes to run quarters and palms and 2 high safety shells. And if you don't have that safety down in the box, then you're going to be -1 or even. And the offense could have an advantage. And if you can't hold up at the point of attack, then you're going to be surrendering a lot on the deck.
Yeah, I guess the last thing is, I wonder, you mentioned the number 3 overall priority in the waiver claim. And I look at cornerback as a spot where I think the Giants might look to upgrade. I look at wide receiver as a spot where they might look to upgrade because as much as Montreal Washington has made a couple of plays here and there, the reality of it is after Saturday's game, Brian Daboll didn't want to talk about the plays that Montreal Washington made. He wanted to talk about the plays that Montreal Washington left on the field. And he wanted to talk about the fact that on the outside, the Giants didn't make enough plays for their quarterbacks. So I won't be surprised if they look for wide receiver help, especially we're still not sure what Jalen Hyatt can be. And Hyatt has missed a decent amount of practice time this summer. So we're not sure what he can be. So, and maybe defensive tackle is another one if the right guy hits the waiver wire. Like I said, I feel like the talent is there, with Bobby Okereke, with Micah McFadden at the linebacker spots, with Golston and with Thibodeau, and just with, I feel like the veterans that they've added to me are at least an upgrade over some of the guys that they were using a year ago. Are they good enough? maybe that depends on what Darius Alexander becomes. But anyway, Nick, I don't know if you have anything else to add before we wrap it up.
No, I think that's good. I'm looking forward to this game on Saturday, and hopefully we learn and have some questions somewhat answered. Some of the questions we went over today during that affair.
Absolutely. So, hey, Nick, thank you very, very much for a few minutes. I know you have to head off to.
Let's not say. I have to head off to a job. All right.
All right, you have to head. We're not gonna go there. All right. So, hey, thank you very, very much, Giants fans. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.